So, hello and welcome to the newest episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast, and I'm really happy to meet you again and talk to you again. And I hope today's episode will be as valuable as the last one, because the last one I think was the best one I've ever made. And today, as you can see, hopefully, as you can see, we are again talking about the book or the insights of the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. The last time we made techniques in handling people and 6 ways to make people like you, and today we are actually going to go through win people to your way of thinking. And I'll say we just get right into it by the first part, which is the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. And you might have the experience yourself, but I made the experience that a lot of times, or just all the time, you're having an argument, both sides are just hating each other afterwards. And that's also because it's some sort of criticism. You criticize somebody because he did something, and this is a great part of arguments. And the best thing is to be the passive guy or girl and, avoid it. Just, avoid it. The second one, show respect for the other person's opinions, never say you're wrong. You wouldn't like it either if somebody came up to you and says, you're wrong, I don't like your opinion, I don't like you therefore. And so I'd say for myself that you should respect every person's opinion, even though if you can't really, sympathize with it. You just have to admit that people have different opinions and people think differently. And every person is different, and so opinions are. And, just get along with it. Don't waste your time thinking about why somebody's opinion is what it is. I'm just really rapidly going through it. I have to take a little bit more time. The third one, if you're wrong, admit it quickly and apathetically. And I really remember the story behind this one. And the story was that there was a guy with a dog, and they were going through a forest or some sort of forest. There was a path, and it was just really great. And he didn't had his little dog on his, I will now say necklace. I don't know the right word, but it is like a necklace. So he was like, oh no, that's okay. There is nobody anyways, so the dog can't do any harm. And the problem behind this was that on the second corner, or just sometime later, a police officer with his horse or on his horse appeared, and then he said, why are you having this dog just going around like this? Don't do that, you're not allowed to, you have to do it, you know it, because it's this forest and that are the rules and so on. So the police officer was just playing important, because as you know from the last episode, people really want to feel important. As you can see, they're standing. People always want to feel this importance, and so the officer just had to be like this. He had to feel important by being, the leader, being the guy who makes the rules and who, just this sort of guy. He just had to do it because he wanted to feel important. And the story goes on because some weeks later, or a week, the guy was again not going with the dog properly, and without his necklace or whatever it is called. And he was at some kind of yield, or I don't know anymore. It was just a field, and it was a kind of hill, and so he was like, yeah, it's okay because nobody can see me anyways, and my dog. And so he was just, going with his dog there. And the problem there was that the police officer appeared again. And this time, this man went straight to the officer and was like, "Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, sir, that I did something against the rules again." And he really meant it, and he was empathetically. He really was. Okay. He really was like, "Oh no, I'm so sorry for that." And then the thing is, and you might have experienced it yourself, that when you do that, people are like, "Oh no, it's okay, just do it like this, and it's okay. I'm not the guy who is, that leader guy." And it was actually the same thing with this police officer. And he did it because he wanted to feel important, and important by just being this friendly guy and being, you know, just being friendly and sympathetical and so on and so on. That's really interesting to me. I just had to smile when I was reading this book, and I have to smile right now. As you can see, obviously. If you're watching the show on YouTube, if you're hearing this, it's a good information for you. But let's move on. Begin in a friendly way. It's some of my patterns I have deeply rooted in my brain is that smiling and being friendly all the time is very important, because nobody really wants to speak with an unfriendly piece of shit. As easy as it is. You don't want to talk to somebody who is just really aggressive or strange, or not really strange. Strange is some kind of spongy term. But just be friendly. It's what you would like to have if you're talking to somebody, so you should do what you would like to have. Just be friendly. Get the other person saying yes, yes immediately. I see this episode is just crushing it already, because this is one of the best insights I had from the book. And it's a really, really, really great technique as well, because it's about letting people say yes, and not just like, randomly and because it is like it, but with a technique and strategy and so on. And the thing is that, for example, when you're heading up to a person and you're asking them, "Could you please show me what time it is?" And they say yes. And then they tell you it, and then you'd be like, "Oh, and can't you just tell me where the next restaurant is?" And they're like, "Yes, of course." And so on. So this technique is that you get the other person to say yes as often as possible. And because people are saying yes, they aren't in a defensive mood, and so the chance that they say yes again, if you're asking them to give you something else, just like, for example, money or a job or some things like this, a telephone number, they are probably saying yes again, because they are not in this defensive mood in which they were when they just had to say no. Because if you say no, you're just really defensive. You're getting really defensive, just out of nowhere. I don't know why, but it seems like to be like it. You should really try this technique the next time you're having a job interview. Just be like, this is a nice office, isn't it? I would really like to have this window there because the light is really great here. and so on, and he might be saying, yes, you're right, and yes, and maybe then he would consider you letting to work for him more than he was, not saying yes. Just having to look. So let's move on. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking, which is a really great transition because I just posted, or I will today post, why you shouldn't be talking all the time and why you should let the other person talk all the time. And so you should check it out if you want to. On Instagram, or on Twitter and on Facebook. It's on Twitter, Self-Tactics, on Instagram, Selfdevelopment_WT, and on Facebook, Self-Development with Tactics with this little line between. What is it called? I don't know. Nevertheless, most of the time people just talk about themselves, and so it's just really, interesting when you're going to a person and you're talking to them, and you're like, you're just asking questions so that they can talk about what they are willing to talk, because people are always willing to talk about themselves. It is what it is, and if you are this person that lets the other person talk, they are, as the story of the book says, really impressed by the conversation, even though it wasn't a conversation. So one of the stories just ended with a guy saying it was a great conversation and so on and so on, but only he had talked, and this was really, this was a moment where I was like, oh, that's interesting. So just let the other person talk and listen to them. You might get a lot of great insights of these people by just listening, and you make them feel good. That's what counts. Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. This was such a complicated one because there aren't really a lot of fields where you can use this technique or this method or this knowledge. But he was talking about a story where a political story actually. Was it political, or it was in a big company? Nevertheless, there were some people and they were discussing about a marketing technique or something they had to just do. And so one came up to them and told them his tactic, and the boss was just like, no, that's bullshit or something like this. It's not working. And the funny thing about the story is that later, or the next day, or several weeks after, they had a meeting, and the boss was like, oh, and I have a really great new idea. And he was basically just telling the idea of this other man he thought that wouldn't work. And instead of the other man being like, oh no, that was my idea, just let them be theirs, because they feel really great, because they were able to, to create something themselves. And that's really important to people. They are just willing to create something themselves. And so it is also something different. If you say, it was something I was really thinking about, because it's a great thing, and but it's pretty complicated to use. So I was thinking about this. If you're having an article and you're like, and on the next page you can see, I don't know, this or that information. You're just providing this information to the people, and they're just there, and they, they just find it, and they look at it. But if you're like, on the next page you can find the informations. It's just about that they're doing something themselves. And I think that this technique is kind of implemented in this thinking, but I'm not sure, and I'm probably going to read this chapter hopefully again because it was really great. So just let people or other people feel that the idea is his or hers or them, theirs, whatever. I'm sorry. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. As I was talking the last time, there are a lot of duplicates in this book, but often it's great because you're repeating it all the time, and so you just remember it better. And the thing is, if you're looking at things on or through somebody's eyes, in quotation marks, you're seeing what they want and not what you want. The last time I was talking about that you should really talk about what other people want and not what you're wanting. And the example would be if you're in a job interview and you should be talking about what is good for the company you will be working with probably in or after the job interview, and not what you would like. So you're not like, I would really like to work for you because I want to get the money and I want to help you and I want to do this and that. You would better be like, I really want to work for your company so that your company grows and so you get more clients and so I can help you grow and so on. And that's quite the same actually. If you're seeing things through somebody's eyes, you just see what they want and not what you're wanting. And maybe the last one. Let's see. Yes, this will be the last one. And the other things will be on the next episode. Because it's really great going through these ideas for me and for you, hopefully. Be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. I honestly don't remember a lot of this phrase, but person's ideas and desires. It's basically you should just not be like your ideas are wrong and your desires are stupid. You just be sympathetic with what the persons are willing to achieve, and be like, oh yeah, that's great if it's great, obviously. I just don't know a lot about this, but maybe you get something out of it. And the 10th one, it's really, really great, but we will do this the next time. It's also one of the best insights and best techniques I got through this book, even though you're just quite using it all the time already and you're not really noticing it. But I really have to thank you for listening to the latest episode of this Self-Development with Tactics podcast, or SDWT podcast. And I really hope that you enjoyed it, that you got a lot of value out of it. And if there's something you're willing to ask, just comment on Instagram or on Facebook or on Twitter or on YouTube, whatever is more convenient to you, for you. And really thank you. Love you all. And I'll see you the next time.